A very warm welcome to Happy Times and Places. It's a podcast. My name is Toby Hadoke. I watch an episode of Doctor Who. I throw in some facts, some observations and some memories, all the while trying to guess what my special guest's favourite thing about this episode that they've chosen is. Welcome and enjoy.
Hi, my name's Joe Lewallen. I am a Doctor Who fan from rural Northern California, and we're going to talk about Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone. These two episodes are the fourth and the fifth episodes of Doctor Who I had ever seen. I saw these before Blink and before Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, and it's just still remains one of my favorite Doctor Who stories ever. Since I've gone back, I've seen most of the classic series. I'm trying to get through all of them. And I just really thank Toby for this opportunity to talk about this story. See about a little bit about me. No blog, no podcast, nothing like that. Just like Doctor Who. I work in social services. I've been doing that for about 23 years. I've also been in the California Army National Guard for almost 35. So I've already filmed all my favorite things, and this is the last bit I'm trying to get done, kind of in timey-wimey fashion, which is appropriate for this story. All right, let's go.
Oh, what a lovely intro for those without pictures, which is all of you. Joe did record that as a video, and he had a lovely snowscape behind him. I'm really excited about this. Joe, unlike the usual contributor to Happy Times and Places, is someone I have never met, and indeed somebody of whom I had no knowledge until I started doing these podcasts. And he was somebody that popped over to Patreon and started sending messages, which is something you can do through the system. And we've gone back and forth, and it's really fascinating because he and I have, almost nothing in common in terms of background, and indeed, when we came to the show, as you heard, this was the fourth episode of Doctor Who Joe watched. He's watched pretty much everything now, and in fact, he's watched some classic Who as a result of, or to prepare for, the Happy Times and Places. So I've kind of dictated his schedule, if you like. Well, no, because he didn't have to, but he's chosen to, and it's been lovely sort of hearing him go, I've been saving this one, I've never seen it before, and I love it because of this, that and the other. And we email about other things, and it's fabulous that somebody who, as I say, my life experiences are totally different to Joe's, and obviously we're from different countries and of different backgrounds and all sorts of other things, and we are united by one thing and one thing alone. And is that maybe we both have the TARDIS as to indicate a text message? Sorry, I'm just covering the fact I've got a text message on my phone. I don't know if you heard that. If you did, it wasn't the Doctor landing in my living room. It's what my text message noise is, because I'm pathetic. And I need to advertise the fact that I'm a Doctor Who fan, in case anyone isn't sure. And yeah, that Joe and I are united simply by the fact that we both really like Doctor Who, and I really like hearing Joe's feedback from Joe's perspective, and we chat occasionally on email and on Patreon and all sorts of other things. So I thought, why not get him to contribute to this, because he's got a lot of really interesting things to say, and he's also chose some new Who, and I remember when this was new Who. I remember this was when this was freshly minted Who. Sorry, there was a brief hiatus there, which you won't have noticed unless there's a slight edit. I had a malfunctioning fan. No, in the utility room. No, it wasn't somebody in a tank top with NHS specs tied up going, I think we'll find Polly's surname was right because there's a document. Not that kind of fan malfunctioning. It was making lots of awful noise. So anyway, I gave it a bit of a dust, and hopefully it will not send the screeching EBGBs through the sound system and into your ears at home, and we can get on with watching this episode of Doctor Who, which did have a rude interruption, actually, on the time of broadcast, which I'm sure I will vent about at length come the episode's conclusion. But it's all a lovin' at the moment, as Joe Lewallen, whom I have never met, but I'm an admirer of, and certainly a willing correspondent with, is going to take us through The Time of Angels. I remember when this was new. This was very early in Joe's Doctor Who journey, quite late in mine. It's only the 4th episode in Matt Smith's and Stephen Moffat's tenure at the top of the show. So, but filmed prior to, I think, The Beast Below and Victory of the Daleks, wasn't it? Was it filmed? It was filmed prior to pretty much everything, I think. So, let's see how we go with The Time of Angels in 3, 2, 1. Now, this is Mike Skinner from the Streets. I did not know that at the time. I had a joke in Moths Ate My Doctor Who scarf about saying it was something like saying the memory cheats to a Doctor Who fan is a bit like going up to a fan of the Streets saying, how can that be music? He's just talking, which used to get a huge laugh. And I took it out eventually because the Streets didn't seem to be what they/he once was. But I actually very much liked the music and lyrics of the Streets. They were I think he's Mike Skinner from, but is he the Streets himself? I don't know how rap works. If it is rap, I'm sure it's its own subgenre. Anyway, he was a famous music fellow, and in fact, when I was struggling to get people to complete the entire run of Doctor Who for Happy Times and Places, I did go on Twitter and Facebook and go, does anybody know the bloke from the Streets? Because I thought he might be the easiest person to get. In fact, I ended up getting Stephen Moffat. But that's a very sort of, it's with he's I don't think I got that the first time round. He's the security guard who has been kissed by River Song, and of course he's not really in a field, and that's, as we'll see with Simon Dutton when they come and apprehend River Song where she is in the airlock. But it's got a fun cameo, and I think Mike Skinner had tweeted, I'm going to be in Doctor Who or something, or tweeted something about Doctor Who, and then had to take it down. And probably what seemed like a fun little cameo job to him suddenly seemed like a maximum security thing. He's going, oh, sorry, I only asked. But anyway, this is a very Stephen Moffat beginning. A mystery, an enigma, bit of sass, a gag, and I remember watching the 11th Hour in a pub organised by Jeremy Bentham, an event. Jeremy Bentham, the Doctor Who fan of yore, venerable elder statesman of Doctor Who fandom, had organised. He organised season premieres quite a lot when I was in London, and it was a great joy to me to feel like I was part of something, to be invited to those and to watch with a load of like-minded people the season premiere of Doctor Who in a pub in London where I was enjoying living. And when a clip of River Song appeared at the end of the 11th Hour, she's great, isn't she? There was a big cheer in the pub, and it had surprised me because I hadn't realised how much people were looking forward to her coming back. I had thought, I will take this with me to the grave. It's quite a nice part for Simon Dutton, but he's gone before the opening titles. But he was the Saint. Do you remember when they revived the Saint some years ago now? And he was the kind of lead, and so brilliant casting for the sort of smooth talking tuxed guy here, and it's a nice part, seeing as it's only a couple of scenes. But I always wonder what actors like him do, who you don't see for ages, and then come and do nice bits in things. I imagine he probably, I don't know, does he run a hotel in France or something and then just deigns to act every now and again? That's or maybe he's really a spy. Yeah, I like that idea. He actually dresses like this in real life, being an international man of mystery, then occasionally comes and acts. That's the glamorous lifestyle I want to ascribe to. So I'll probably find, if I look him up on IMDb now, he's been consistently working, just not in things that I've seen. And that can happen, where you suddenly go, where's that guy come from? And you look at him and go, oh, they've got 200 credits. They've just not been in the things I've been watching. But he's perfectly cast in this. I mean, I worry because this is funny, obviously, and you know, it's a gag, and it shows her, you know, her confidence that she's going to be picked up by the Doctor and all of that sort of thing. But I do worry on the other side of it that there's 3 men there in an airlock who might get sucked out into space and killed. But that's because maybe I need to develop a sense of humour. I don't know. But I love this. I love this music. I love this this Murray Gold theme for this Doctor. Oh yes, and of course, because the ship crashes as well, so they do die. Those people do die. But so even if they did, as I've just thought, they shut the airlock and they were fine. They die soon anyway. So yeah, I remember when this was new, I watched this. Having watched the 11th Hour in a pub with loads of Doctor Who fans, I watched this in a Travelodge in Preston because I was doing the late lamented Frog and Bucket Comedy Club in Preston, and it was not busy either. But I trooped down to it after the episode and took my ire out on the scant crowd. Anyway, here we go. So, yeah, because Adam Smith is he directs these two, doesn't he, in the 11th Hour, and then we never see him again. In fact, we also don't see Andrew Gunn, do we? The director of Victory of the Daleks and The Beast Below, which had been a kind of both, I think, the morning after, the night before, hadn't they, of the 11th Hour, which is, I think, possibly the best launch that any Doctor's ever had. It's a terrific. I mean, but I love Power of the Daleks, but it's a really strong episode. It's a really strong start to an era. That was the dust from the fan, by the way. It was a really strong start to an era, seeing as we were a blank slate, you know, and we had a whole new team having to establish themselves, and it's a brilliant establisher of the show. And then Beast Below, which I'll be interested to do one day, which I remember people at the time saying it had been the best script any of them had ever read, but it didn't quite translate into that on screen. And Victory of the Daleks is a strange beast. It goes from being a sort of Power of the Daleks pastiche with Winston Churchill in it to a launch of a new range of toys in a tobacco factory. And they'd sort of shown that there were chinks in Moffat's armour in a way, because he'd been so... I mean, you know, each of his stories were, you know, regarded as the best or close to the best of each of the seasons they were in, and I was certainly a very, you know, strongly looking forward to him taking over, because I loved all of his episodes that he did under Russell T Davies. But I remember, and this is what I will take to my grave, I do like this TARDIS as well, but and I like the colour palette that this whole series has. I will take to my grave with me the fact that Rachel, who is a regular punter at my comedy club, XS Malarkey, who is a lovely person, who is not a Doctor Who fan, wrote to me and said, so who is this River song? After Silence in the Library, River's Forest of the Dead, and said, who is this River song? And, you know, when will we see her again? And blah-de-blah. And I went, no. She was particular to that story. The whole thing about that story is that it's a heartbreaking story that has been told off stage. We met her for the first time, and she dies when we meet her. And the tragedy of the Doctor is that he's got this story that he will live with her, and we've come in on the end. And it's a clever thing of time, of going, oh, the first time they meet is the last time they meet. And it's a very Stephen Moffat idea, and it's there in that wonderful two-parter as a sort of emotional core to a very spooky story about a haunted library of flesh-eating dust monsters. And I couldn't have been, and she was like, no, but surely, because they've set this up now. I was like, no, the whole thing is told in that story. And of course I was completely wrong, and I don't know what I'm talking about, and I will give my Doctor Who card back on the admission of that. And I remember there were some photos of this flying around, weren't they? These were the early looks we got of the Matt Smith Doctor. And I have to say, I remember there were rumours that he wasn't up to it. I remember being told by somebody that the word is he's not very good. Well, obviously that word was not true, because you can't have watched any of his performances in his early shows and not think he's absolutely amazing. So that was just gossip and slander. But I think there was trouble with this. We'll talk about one of the soldiers later, because something happened there. But anyway, here we are. Here's I like all the doctory bantery stuff. I like Moffat's clever dialogue. I like the relationship between River and the Doctor. But it's a bit like Romana and the Doctor. We don't mind the Doctor being cut down to size. The Doctor's actually a bit boring if he's an all-conquering hero. I quite like that the Doctor is the one that got 49% in his exams. I like the fact that River Song can cut him down to size a little bit, but in the final acknowledgement she knows he's amazing and the best thing ever and the real hero of the story. So but it makes for a bantery dynamic. I mean, I understand people who think that maybe Moffat's Doctor is all bantery stuff, but if you can write witty dialogue, do it. Karen Gillan is great, isn't she? She's she's absolutely stunning. They're a great. I'm thinking about Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson now, and how those publicity photographs are really selling the show. And I think Matt Smith and Karen Gillan have a similar, slightly more idiosyncratic maybe, but they make for great pictures. I love Ian Glenn's performance in this. I think he's absolutely terrific. I made the mistake. I remember when I interviewed Moffat about this, I suspect he would have been much happier. Very kind of him, Stephen, to give me his time for my stupid podcast. But I talked to him about Time of Angels, and I talked to him about Ian Glenn, and he's like, yeah, great, but that's you have to choose your questions really, and Stephen Moffat is storytelling, plot twists, timey-wimey, the humour, blah, 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 blah. He's not disinterested in the actors, and obviously he has an eye for casting. He cast Matt Smith, he cast Karen Gillan, he cast Arthur Darvill, but he's not in it. That's what I'm in it for. I'm in it for the character actors. He's in it for other stuff. And I think I showed my naivety as an interviewer there, asking a question about a guest star that I rather liked, who, Stephen's just like, yeah, he's great. He was really nice and he was great. Rather than about that character or about this or about... So anyway, it's just... I will occasionally just offload one of my shortcomings. This is kind of therapy. This is a fantastic... It's not a set, is it? It's nature, but it's a fantastic setting. That shot of the spaceship and the crashed spaceship, is a brilliant desolate start. And I love this idea of warrior monks, which of course goes back. There's a historical and legendary precedent for warrior monks, even though to us now it may seem slightly oxymoronic and paradoxical or whatever, but crusaders were fighting for religion. So the idea is just, it's interesting to see them in fatigues and with machine guns. But I like that. I think that's a smart use of invoking something that has a kind of familiarity and putting a modern twist on it. I think that really, really works. I'm Mr. Grumpy Face today. I suspect there is tons that I'm missing here in the witty banter and the dialogue, which Joe will doubtless choose all lines, and I'll go, I was probably talking through that. I was probably apologising for something or banging on about something pointless. I remember this so well. This is I remember talking to somebody when this was just coming up, saying who I think had been privy to the script for this episode, maybe, who said it's got so many good ideas, and there's one sequence in it, and it's going to be this sequence with the, with the angel in the eye, that could make a whole story, but that he does it as a set piece and then starts moving on and doing other things. In fact, that he's got so many good ideas in his head that sometimes you think, well, another writer might have just done one of those ideas and done the whole story about it, which means you get brilliant set piece after. Some of the set pieces in the Moffat era, I think, are fantastic, and the fact that it's on black and white security footage, that helps. The fact that it's jumpy video, that helps. They've got they've got the video of the angel from the same place as I got most of my Heart on the Troughton episodes. Yeah, they got it from Colin at the Place, the comic shop in Wolverhampton. You give 2 VHSs and you get one back with a weeping angel in terrible quality. Actually, the ones I got were generally quite high quality, but that's for another day. And of course, this makes for a great reveal, which funny enough isn't as clear. I will explain later when I'm apologising for another mistake that I've made. He's got such gravitas, hasn't he, Ian Glenn? Had he done? I don't think had he done. I certainly hadn't watched Game of Thrones at this point. I came late to Game of Thrones. I then gorged it, and making a virtue here of the fact that the companion is sometimes left out, and that and the doctor leaving the companion in danger by overlooking them, really. But this is such a brilliant. It's a classic Doctor Who scene. And I love all of this whole stuff about having an ancient tome. Anything that is sort of written by dead people, smelling the book is great. And the beats of this are so good. The danger escalates. The way that it's shot as well. Her looking at it and coming forward to us. The angel gradually moving. The reflection in the eye. That's the idea that my friend who'd read the script said, there's this thing about, a thing that the angel could do that should be the whole story, and it's just used for this one amazing scene. I mean, I know it does have ramifications later on, but you could make a whole story about what the image of an angel being the angel and all of that. God, she owns this, doesn't she? I think Alex Kingston's great. I think River Song is fantastic. As I said, I think I might have said this before. My ex-wife, with whom I watched all of these Doctor Who's, because she wasn't my ex-wife then, timey-wimey, what isn't a great fan of Moffat women, tits with quips, she said. Or maybe I said that in response to what she was trying to say, because it sounds like something wittier that I would say. But I don't know, because they have agency, but are they? I don't know. I'm not a woman. Are they idealized? That they're sassy and they're smart Alex. But is that a bad thing? Is that a bad thing? Why is that a bad thing? I don't know. And I have lots of female friends who are great fans of this era, and they love Amy Pond and they love River Song, and certainly Doctor Who's female demographic has definitely remained pretty healthily high throughout the whole of the modern series. I think this is an absolutely terrific sequence. It takes such the basics of Doctor Who, an ancient text. An ominous line, that which holds the image of an angel itself becomes an angel. A sudden moment of realization of, oh my midubibs, we're in big trouble, and the companion's in the trouble, and I love the juxtaposition of their working it out, whilst Amy hasn't worked it out, but she's got the literally ocular proof. Ha ha ha. Yeah, it's absolutely terrific, and they are such a simple monster, aren't they? They're a statue, but they're a statue that can suddenly have fangs. And having it as a black and white television jumpy video image, which again is something we've got to kind of anchor on, is an absolutely terrific visual, because it comes with it as, you know, as sort of, you know, but fuggy black and white video is either to do with eavesdropping, isn't it? To do with security cameras, or it's to do with something ancient where, you know, everyone in it is dead because it's an old black and white print from long ago. So both of those things carry with them, you know, a sort of certain haunting, mysterious quality, and that's great shooting it from the back. It's a bit like the bit in Caves of Androzani when they're watching the video screen, isn't it? And she can't switch it off with the remote control. You can't switch an angel off and back on again. I like her, and I do like her funky welding pistol. And this is, you know, this is this is really well directed. All that reflection on her face, she's playing it fantastically. But isn't that a great idea to have gone, you know, don't blink? Okay, you can't blink. That's the thing. We all know that. If you blink, they will get you. But if you keep your eyes open, the image of the angel is reflected in your eye. And so it's a way of taking a monster. Because I have to say, I did worry also about how the angels would exist as a monster outside of Blink. They seemed like such a one-story creation. And of course, they're absolutely magnificent in this, without betraying what they actually were. Yeah, that was really good. I see all this quick fire, bap, bap, bap. I really like, and I know some people aren't fans of it, but I was trying to talk myself out of it by invoking Catherine's objections, but you know, she needs to speak for herself, and I'm sure articulated it better than I, and she's a smart cookie. But I failed to sum up what it was, why it was that she doesn't like the writing of these women who, you know, meant, you know, I think the intention is to make them empowered and have agency and be good fun. But it's a minefield, isn't it? It's a minefield. But for me, I love Moffat's humour. I love his bantery dialogue. I think it's peppy. It's fun. You know, I was brought up watching Press Gang, which I adored. Now, one of these soldiers, I think one of the soldiers in the cave above, is an actor called Stephen Walters, who doesn't make it down below, and was supposed to be one of the ones who does a lot of the talking later on. And he's a brilliant actor, Stephen Walters. Excellent in Good Cop, and he's in Tin Star, and he was in a brilliant thing called Buried years ago about prison. And he's a Liverpudlian actor, and he's a fantastic actor. And I think he was cast. Well, it said Stephen Matthew Walters in the cast list I saw. And sometimes you have an actor that's got the same name but a different name to differentiate in equity. But I think he's the same guy. But anyway, they lost a one of the soldiers, and I don't quite know why or how. I don't know what the issue was there, but that's something to investigate down the line. But Stephen Walters was supposed to be one of the soldiers, and they amalgamated the roles. What does annoy me, though, is that a couple of the soldiers here that you see quite clearly, Mark Monero, who used to be in EastEnders, who's great, and George Rossi, they're both really good actors who've done loads of stuff. Because they have no lines in this episode, they don't get credited. But they're not extras. Extras are supporting artists who don't have to audition and aren't playing acting roles, principal acting roles. Whereas an actor is. And so an actor who is an equity member, who also is entitled to residuals and blah, 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 is entitled to a credit, and it doesn't matter whether they say lines or not. But it's a modern thing, you know. That you know has started to creep into television productions, which I don't like. It's not much to give an actor a credit, and they just because their speaking part doesn't speak in a particular episode, they still had to turn up, they still had to do the job, blah 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 blah. If they're in the episode, they should receive a credit. It is the bare minimum. And Doctor Who isn't the only thing that started to do this. It's happened a lot with detective dramas that I've seen, and all sorts of stuff where an actor, who's got a speaking part in 3 episodes out of the 4, in the 3rd episode where they're in the office but they don't have a line, they don't get a credit, and that's naughty, because actors casting guest roles are not the same as extras who are, there is a casting process goes on, but it's not the same, and it's not the same job. But there we go. And also it annoys me because people have started to call actors in guest roles extras. I saw a friend of mine do it the other day where he called somebody who was a regular part in Coronation Street an extra. Anyway, let's not get on to the nomenclature of different turns in dramas. I do anyway. There's so much that's good going on here, and that's brilliant, isn't it? Because we've all had something gritty in our eye, and in fact, I mean, sometimes I have a recurring thing with what feels like a hair, and I think it's a phantom hair. Whenever anyone puts makeup on my face, I get this phantom hair in my eye that starts stabbing me, and I get hay fever as well. So sometimes when you get a bit that you can't shift in your eye, and it's what Stephen Moffat, I think, continually does so well. He goes, "What's a thing that everybody has or does that I can turn into something truly horrifying?" So she's got this thing in her eye, and she's rubbing her eye, and the dust falls out. It's a very I say it's a simple visual. Dust is a simple thing, something in your eyes. I'm sure it was very hard to pull off, but it doesn't draw attention to itself because it's so brilliantly done. And it's such a simple idea, but that resonates far more than its apparent simplicity. This is beautiful. I mean, this is a classic Doctor Who scene of couple of guys looking around, and that they're going to end up toast. But beautiful cave, beautiful lighting, beautiful mist, and again the fact that they're in sort of modern fatigues with machine guns, but they're clerics, makes it's familiar and yet it's different, and so it's quite refreshing. And actually, it's quite exciting seeing this sort of military stuff in modern Doctor Who. I still find that quite exciting because even though there's been loads of military in Doctor Who, it's always exciting when people turn up with loads of firepower, because that they're kind of there for the firepower not to be enough because the Doctor's on hand and the Doctor's going to have to solve the thing. So that all these tooled up people are in for a whole heap of trouble, and that's quite exciting, because I don't know why, because that essentially lots of people are going to get killed. But again, that's beautifully and very effectively done. And of course we have that thing where they're talking over the radio, and it's not them, which we get to later, which is truly, truly horrible. It's very good. It's very spooky. It's very atmospheric. And, neither of these guys are doing anything stupid, because sometimes when you have scenes like this, the person that dies is just a bit of an idiot. But, he was cautious. He was still kept his guard up and blah, blah, blah. And this stuff, and this is wonderful, because you have the benefit of the visual of the angel, but that glorious thing of that, as far as we know, they're old statues that have been worn down by time. So they're scarier because they're like statue corpses. Because if there's anything scarier than an old sort of spooky statue, it's an old spooky statue that is so old it's been worn away by the passage of time and the inevitability of the elements, which humbles us all, because again, anything that's sort of old is a reminder of our mortality. And you look at an old statue, you think, God, all the hands that crafted that have lived their lives and are long dead, and as are many people that have walked past this and given it the once over, or touched it, or just walked past it, and I will be in that position when somebody in 100 years does this as well, and suddenly it's really humbling. I love the way that the Doctor is with that soldier, and he's a very sweet character, and the Doctor's just sort of reassured him. And Moffat can be quite cruel, because you kind of think, oh yeah, the Doctor's reassured him, he's going to be all right. That's a brilliant shot, that you know, so I keep saying it's a brilliant set, but it's a mixture, isn't it? However, you know, it's a brilliant visual. I think the visuals in this, from the color palette to the lighting, in this era are fantastic. This is a great episode of Doctor Who. It's got it all. Sassy beginning, you know, military stuff, spooky, couple of set pieces. Oh dear. This is quite cruel. Oh, that's great. The silhouette. And isn't there something brilliant about those statues, sort of, you know, caught mid pose as well? And of course we have this marvelous bit coming up. And of course, and this is where I have to confess, I was watching this with my son Louis, who was very young when this was on, and we were travelling to and from London, and I didn't see them enough, and I was always stressed from the journey, and I wanted to be a good dad and all of that sort of thing. And we did watch Doctor Who and had fun with it, and I remember being so excited by this bit, you know, the bit where they realise that, oh crikey, it's not the Aplans, because the Aplans have two heads, isn't it? That I wanted Louis to get it, and I said, and I went, oh, because it's a really scary moment, and I was sort of trying to transmit my enjoyment of that, but he didn't get it. So, but I didn't tell him. I tried to explain it to him. Well, they've got two heads, so what's that? And he hadn't quite worked out that you know, these were supposed to be statues of the Aplans because they look like weeping angels, and I think that is an issue, is that they do. You know, we kind of know they're weeping angels. We don't really think they're statues, because, but anyway, or maybe that's just retrospect. But a perception filter is a good explanation as to why they haven't picked it up, and it's got them in the middle of what aren't statues to the dead, because the Aplans have, is it two heads? They've got two heads. There we go. And so I tried to explain this to Louis, but get him caught up in the excitement of it. But rather than tell him, and so then I got impatient getting him to work it out. And what should have been a fun moment where we got both really excited together ended up with him actually quite upset, because I got impatient that he hadn't twigged what the connotation of the two heads thing was. And it ended up being a really bad moment between us, and instigated entirely by me. And I felt terrible. And I still feel terrible to this day, and I hate myself for it, and I apologised to him for it about a year ago, and he had no memory of it whatsoever. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you don't have to remember something for it to affect you subconsciously. Anyway, see, what am I doing? I'm talking about a huge regret and something I feel guilty about, instead of enjoying this absolutely cracking moment of revelation in Doctor Who, where these horrible semi-preserved, oh, that was brilliant. It's like one of the figures of Pompeii, something sort of caught mid-movement, but also, you know, atrophied by, you know, the dripping water or your age or the elements, that makes them seem like, yeah, they're not just the angels, they're the angels as zombies, they're the angels as mummies, they're the angels as the preserved in death moments of the stricken of Pompeii. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's brilliant. I think it's spooky. And this poor sod, who we've just seen being reassured by the Doctor, is caught in the middle of them and doesn't know what we've just been told. And it's so sad for poor old Bob. And what they do with Angel Bob is horrible later, but it's a lovely little cameo, and it's a sweet part, is Bob, and it's yeah. Oh, poor Bob. I feel a bit sad for Bob, but this is brilliant, of course, because it's a staple of drama, but Doctor Who does it so well, and Stephen Moffat does it brilliantly here. Is, you know, we've got chaos and panic going on elsewhere, and we've got this guy who doesn't know what any of this is about, and it's inevitable now. We know he's toast, but it's making us follow him every step of the way, and that's really cruel and really horrible. I mean, you know, it's horrible, but we feel it. That's the beauty of Doctor Who, is that you do feel every sort of individual death. See, there's a good shot of George Russo, yeah, who doesn't get a credit in this episode, and he's quite a well-known actor. because he hasn't got any lines. And there's Mark Monero, who I've seen on stage, and he says he's had a great career, actually. I've seen them both, actually, in sort of London gangster-type films. I've got a slight weakness for films that have people like Craig Fairbrass walking into pubs going, oh, effing have him! And they call him the peeler. Why? Because he peels potatoes and then hits people to death with a baseball bat. It was a sort of guilty pleasure of mine over lockdown. Poor old Bob. And I remember not quite knowing what was going on. And of course, it's the way it taunts the Doctor is really horrible, because it's really horrible, this, isn't it? Because you feel that the Doctor hopefully had given Bob some useful advice, and actually Bob's dead, and Bob's dead, isn't he? Oh, that's so sad. And this is a bit like, isn't it, Miss Evangelista's ghost? It's a conversation with a dead person, which is, so it's a recurrent, I hate the word trope, but it's of a similar ilk to the Miss Evangelista thing, but it is disquieting. It is odd. There is something odd about conversations with the dead, about a connection with the past, with what is gone, which is why I think timey-wimey is quite an intriguing idea. But of course, if you can then go and change it, that's not helpful to me dramatically. But I think something about connecting with something from beyond the grave, there's something really humbling about that, because it heightens your own mortality. You know, if something seems so real and alive that you know is dead, well, the fact that you feel real and alive is nothing, because you know, in a very short space of time, when all things are considered, will also be dead. I like the fact that Octavian thinks the Doctor's a prick, and Ian Glenn's in no way arch about it. He's obviously a good man and a decent man and a man who does his duty. But and we love the Doctor, but the Doctor, if you are cut from Octavian's cloth, as it were, somebody like that Doctor is an anarchist and irresponsible, and this is brilliant. The fact that Amy is infected by the angel. That's a new sort of thing for them, isn't it? The fact that we can, suddenly you can turn into an angel. That's pretty horrible. This is a great setting, and so they've got to get up to the base of the spaceship, which is a lovely problem for them to have. And I like all this sort of military stuff, because that makes it all seem exciting, and when they all get defensive, it makes you feel like the enemy are closing in, and you've got this extra level of jeopardy, because and there's nothing like a flashing their torch losing its power. It's brilliant. It's so good, because it's taking us to the cliffhanger, and we've got a problem with Amy. We've got the monsters closing in. We've got them unable to get to where they need to get to. It's and I love that. It's brilliantly directed, but I love and it's inherited from Blink, the stylistic thing of the sort of camera shutter noise and the sudden, they're moving, they're getting closer and closer. I love that. It's such a brilliant way of depicting the way that they move, of the sudden darkness, the flash of darkness, and they've moved forward a couple of feet and changed their position. That's all absolutely terrific. Bedwettingly scary. I imagine if you're a kid, that is terrifying, more terrifying than your dad being a prick on your visit to London. I quite like the fact that the way he had to get her out is to bite her. That's quite Doctor Who-y as well. You've had all these different things. If you've got space teeth alive, that's all I'm saying. See, that's all great fun. So Darren Morfitt there, he gets a line. He's what's his character called? He's in a film called Dog Soldiers. And he plays, what's his character he plays? Who's this gobby Geordie soldier who, and it's a similar sort of setup to this. It's Sean Pertwee and Kevin McKidd and a load of soldier guys on manoeuvres, and they end up, besieged in in a cottage by a werewolf, and it's great. And Darren Morfitt's absolutely fantastic in it, and has got a brilliant line that I don't want to spoiler it. But even my friend John, who's not a big Doctor Who fan, but John and I used to watch loads of movies together, but we never watched Dog Soldiers together. But he texted me or tweeted me and said the name of the character from Dog Soldiers is in Doctor Who, and I went, yeah, I know, it's great, isn't it? I died in fear. That's so horrible. And actually the way that the actor does it as well, he still plays it as Bob's diction, Bob's quite innocent, simple, direct sort of delivery, rather than relishing it and being sarcastic. And that, in fact, that sort of dissonance, that distance from the emotion of what he's saying makes it even more sort of cold and clinical. It's a very good choice. It's a clever choice. Adam Smith's done a great job with the direction as this as well. It does feel like a sort of movie, doesn't it? And having it down in the caves, this is a great setting. Lighting's fantastic. All that cutting, those close-ups, the chunk, chunk, chunk. They're moving, and I have. And this, and I think this is an odd cliffhanger. The cliffhanger isn't the danger. The cliffhanger is the Doctor, doing his victory speech, and it depends on the actor. It depends on rhythm. It's a hero moment. It's the Doctor knows they're getting out. They're getting out of it, but we don't know what that is, and so the cliffhanger resolution will be, what is it that the Doctor's done? But I love that. So it's based entirely on rhythm, and this sort of the money shot here, and a hero moment. What the hell's gone on? We don't know what's gone on, and we're distracted from what's gone on because the BBC have put a blooming avatar of Graham Norton advertising Strictly Come Dancing or whatever's coming next over the action, and I was absolutely furious. Hugely furious. And I do, it's the sort of thing that it's a Philistine thing to do. It's a program. It's a piece of it. Every shot, every rhythm, every piece of dialogue, every pitch of performance has been thought about, has had industry and hard work put into it. Now, all right, it's not brain surgery, etc., 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 but it takes skill, it takes imagination, it takes creativity, and to bung a logo on it to plug what's coming next is an act of such desecration that I can understand were it performed by somebody who didn't work for a public service broadcaster. But I still wouldn't approve of it, and it's dogs in the corner, logos in the corner, and all of that sort of stuff. Just let us be free to watch a program. You don't eat a meal with the waiter keep nudging you and saying dessert's coming in a minute, or here's a leaflet for our other restaurant and all that sort of stuff. Let people, or at least let people opt out of. Shrunk credits is another thing. I know that's a thing that's specific to me, but the dog in the corner during the action at a climactic moment that the episode has been building to put that there is. Can you hear? I'm furious about it so many years later. This is a joyous podcast. It's because it's such a good episode as well. But I would have been annoyed if they'd done that with Underworld. I'd have been annoyed if they'd done that with the cliffhanger episode 3 of Death to the Daleks. It doesn't have to be a work of art. And I was. But what do you know? What heartened me about it was that I was so incensed. I went down and I did it to the Frog and Bucket in Preston, which wasn't a great club and was certainly not one where you'd deal in anything esoteric or whimsical. It all had to be pretty on the nail, and you always had to win their approval pretty much by, especially if you looked and sounded like me. I had to spend the first 5 minutes really taking one for the team and eliciting their trust and doing loads of banter with them so that they eventually went, oh, he's all right, and basically insult myself and insult them and blah, 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 whatever. But I got there, and then I did this whole speech where I was so furious and impassioned in my fury about them putting a logo for the next program on the program that I just enjoyed, that I got a round of applause. And I wasn't expecting to for a start, I didn't really know what I was doing. That's what happens when one is emceeing sometimes. You know, you go off on a riff and you create a moment or whatever. But, I hadn't planned on getting a round of applause. I didn't really know where I was going with it. But I was obviously so impassioned. And maybe, maybe they agreed. Maybe you don't have to be a geeky Doctor Who fan to go, I don't want a moment, the climactic moment of the television programme I've invested my time in, to be ruined by the very people who were giving it to me, because if they don't respect it, how the hell is anybody else supposed to? That's the thing. If the curator of the museum thinks the exhibits are worth putting stickers over, then why do they think anybody will visit the place? Do you know what I mean? I hate to say the lunatics have taken over the asylum, but it seems to me, if you're either underestimating your audience, which is cynical, and nobody gets anywhere by underestimating the audience, and how dare you as well. That sort of assuming the audience is stupid has never created anything brilliant. And in fact, I would probably have assumed that audience wouldn't have even cared what I was talking about with the thing that I did. And actually, when I did it, there was enough either in common or the way that I delivered it or something about what it was that they connected with it and they liked it. So I didn't go with my assumption, because you can't. And also, you don't patronize the audience. And if you don't care about the stuff that you're putting out there, if you have such disdain for the work that's been put in by and paid for by the license payer, then you're in the wrong business. Gosh, this is supposed to be what a happy time. Well, I am quite happy when I'm sort of divesting myself of pent-up fury. What I've done there, I've divested myself, the guilt over my child, my anger over the closing credits and not crediting certain people, and the logo appearing as but it's a great episode. I think it's hard because I'm not as familiar with New Who as Old Who. I've still watched that probably, a good 9 or 10 times. But I think with Moffat in particular as well, you have to really be listening to the dialogue, which is hard to do when you're commentating over it. But there are so many exchanges there that would be gold dust in any other Doctor Who story that I think we take for granted with Stephen Moffat. I think his dialogue sings and his humour pervades the whole thing, and without ever sending it up or undermining it. It's the humour is almost a rhythm and a motor of the dynamic between the characters, and that makes you invest in them. And also, humour is very. I've just been thinking and writing and broadcasting a little bit about the Philip Hinchcliffe era, and I think that the humour is deployed there very well, where it's it's quite smart humour, but it's never silly, and it never undermines the action, and I think that's what goes on here. I mean, yes, people do talk like witty banterers, but that's okay. It's television, it's not real, and I would rather have that than something sort of mundane or too prosaic or just a bit stilted. So bring it on. So I have to choose my 3 favourite things, and Joe has chosen 3 of himself, all in different backgrounds, and as he said, he recorded those all before the bit that we just heard, because in true Moffat style, we gone a timey-wimey. So what are my favourite things? Well, I think the set piece with the Angel and Amy in that scene, it's going to be that scene. See, there's so many great set pieces. And also the bit where they realise that they're not the Atlans because they don't have 2 heads. And I like the fact that they've got the perception filter there that sort of explains their slowness as well, which is quite nice, because we wouldn't know. We don't know the Atlans have 2 heads because we don't know what Atlans are. And that, as I say, that bit is slightly, because they do look like weeping angels. It's slightly unclear, isn't it? But it works, and that moment of real, and it's all to do with the pacing of it as well, the realization when it comes in, and that's all to do with the direction and the writing and the urgency. That's what I love about episodes when they get sort of dramatic and exciting in Modern Who, is the pacing of them and the cutting and all of that, and that's done so well. The scene where they suddenly realize they're surrounded by weeping angels, and the fact that they're sort of, you know, abstractions of the weeping angel physiognomy because they've been corroded by, you know, time and dripping water and, you know, sort of natural entropy, if you like, that makes them as a visual even more terrifying than they were. And I think that evoking of the frozen dead of Pompeii, the mummified corpses of Pompeii, you know, mid panic, or you know, it's so heartbreaking yet so terrifying, and to have that sort of writ large and come to life, or potentially coming to life, I think is a fantastic, another fantastic set piece, and so that's two scenes. So I've got to think of something different for my third thing. Oh, well, or is it the cliffhanger? It is a great cliffhanger, isn't it? I do like the lighting, though. I like the setting of the caves. I like the fact that they're military clerics. That gives it a bit of its sort of oomph, a bit of its backbone. You know, you need something to sort of level the, you know, the arch comic banter and interplay between the Doctor and River and Amy, where if you're not too careful, you could get a sass overload. So I like Octavian. I think I'll probably choose Ian Glenn next week anyway. But I do like the fact that you have this sort of backup of these military clerics, which just give it a bit of, you know, a bit of unit style, sort of heft, if you like. But it also it cuts through the banter. I do like the pre-credits scene as well, though. I like the fact that it's the streets. Ha ha ha. I think River Song is great in these stories. So what am I going to go with? But I like Angel Bob too. So scary and so horrible. What shall I choose? Cliffhanger, Angel Bob, River Song. I mean, Matt Smith and Karen Gillan both deserve a mention. Adam Smith, the director, too. But I think the fact that they're warrior monks, I like that. That just seems to me to be an ingredient that gives the episode just a little bit of extra oomph and a bit of extra grounding, and because, as I said before, it's a sort of recognizable thing, but it's given a bit of a modern twist, and it also gives us, you know, sort of modern style military in a futuristic story, and it just makes it a bit more sort of grounded and believable. So yeah, they're my things. Amy and the image of the angel in the screen, which is a classic scene and always will be. The realizing that they're not Aplan statues, they're weeping angels, and they're corroded, melted ones as well. And the fact that they're warrior monks. Those are my three things. Partially because Joe and I talk about, because I've never served in the military, and Joe has, Joe has, and I find that, you know, a very interesting perspective, and I admire anybody that puts themselves, you know, through all that, you know, rigorous training, and puts themselves in, you know, in the line of fire, and, you know, puts the freedom and safety of other people before their own, all that sort of thing, which is nothing. And, you know, I can talk a good game just about, but I'm not good for much else. So I do admire people that have been in real situations that you know, I can only imagine, and I suspect my imagination is not even close. So I'm interested in Joe's perspective on that, because I'm sure he will have a perspective on the militaristic aspects of this. Hope so, anyway, but maybe that'll be for episode 2. But anyway, let's see what Joe Lewallen, American Doctor Who fans' favourite thing about Time of the Angels number 1 is going to be, and there's a visual here, and he's on a great big JCB tractor thing.
First favorite thing about Time of Angels is the opening. I saw this, and this was before I'd ever heard the term timey-wimey, but it's just a classic example of Stephen Moffat's writing. From the hallucination, to the spaceship, to Amy and the Doctor in the museum, 12,000 years later, and then meeting back up, River getting shot into space, landing in the TARDIS, Follow that ship. Fantastic. More, please.
Oh, I should have chosen that. It's so obvious now. He says it. Oh, by the way, it's a John Deere truck, not a JCB. I don't want to get my tractors wrong. It might not even be a tractor. It's got a grab. What is it? It's one of them. A digger. He's on a digger. It's a big yellow digger. It's like Bessie with teeth. It is a brilliant opening. Why didn't I choose the opening? I should have, because I think when I was thinking of the opening, I was thinking of the airlock scene, which I do like, but it's a sort of bit of sass, and it's got the dinner jacket thing going on, and it's a bit oldie worldy and a bit sass. But no, he's right, because it's got, and added Mike Skinner from the Streets, because it's got the hallucination idea, because it's got the time travel element to it. It's also got the sass, but then it's got the hero moment and the rescue, and then, but it leads into the story. Follow that ship. It's beautifully constructed. It's extremely well directed. It's got the mystery as well because of the Doctor and Amy with the box. It has everything: action, wit, intrigue, sass, clever time travel twist, hero moment, bam, into the action. Oh, Joe, I mean, I knew that. I knew everything that you said. I agreed with, and yet I chose crappy thing about having soldiers in it. Yeah, somebody else should be doing my job. Who else could present my own podcast? I'm sure somebody would do it better. Anyway, dash, I should have got that point. But yeah, well put, Joe. And I'm so glad it still works for you now as it did then when this was only your 4th episode of Doctor Who. And in your own words, more please. Number 2, Joe's number 2, where he's inside, sitting on a sofa, with 2 caps hanging behind him, and he's stroking a lovely-looking dog. So here we are, Joe. What have you got to say?
Second favorite thing I like about Time of Angels and the whole story are the Anglican soldiers. Doctor Who is not always respectful toward the church or the military. You don't have to be respectful toward those institutions. I was making fun of the Army last night. You can do that. But I thought this was pretty unique in New Who. It's not always respectful. In this instance, the soldiers were not portrayed as buffoons or antagonistic toward our heroes, or just disposable red shirts to be mowed down by the enemy of the week. So it was a great performance by the actor doing Father Octavian, Ian Glenn, and I really liked his portrayal. I do question their rank structure because they seem to have one senior officer and a bunch of squaddies. Doesn't always work. Where are your sergeants? They did have a combat engineer to blow a hole in the wall to get into the Maze of the Dead. It's good to have combat engineers. I served as a combat engineer. I'm filming this on Veterans Day, so service is always on my mind, but especially today. So if you served in any capacity for any nation, thank you for your service.
You see, I love that. I'm so glad Joe brought that into the equation. I mean, as I say, I'm a weedy liberal peacenik, and I think it's so interesting to get intelligent and respectful commentary from a genuine perspective of somebody who's been part of the military, and we've had very interesting conversations about the portrayal of the military in Doctor Who, and Joe is very shows great equanimity there as well, of not even the bits that he when he doesn't particularly like what Doctor Who's done with the military, doesn't get cross. You see people these days. I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter today banging on about something, going, and 11 does this, and you go, just because you don't like a thing, or the Doctor behaves in a way that you wouldn't, wind your neck in, for goodness sake. And it's interesting that Joe will go, yeah, I didn't like the way that the military, and I didn't like that, but I do like this, and I do, and that's how you have a conversation, and that's how you deal with the show when it does something that you don't particularly like. And Joe has every right to get affronted, because he's I think when Doctor Who can portray the military in a bad light, people who've genuinely put their lives on the line and serve their country might go, oh, that's a bit rich for you to say, television people. You try doing what we've done. And I always think that when I think of my own political views about, it's all very well to rattle them out in an intellectual fashion, but it's a bit obtuse to do it when you're talking to people that have actually done that really hard stuff. And so even though I'm not a militaristic fellow of any sort, I do have great admiration, and increasingly so as I get older, for people that have done that stuff that I've never had to do. And indeed the generations before me who I see being belittled now, as now that we just look at the past and because they didn't have certain standards about certain things that we do, how awful they must all have been. You think, yeah, so awful that they were on Normandy beaches and doing things that would have absolutely scared the bewinkles out of you keyboard warriors. So I'm very pleased. Well, also really pleased that having belittled my own choice, it's now been the choice that Joe has made, and so now we're actually 1-1. So I mean, not only is it brilliant because he's chosen the thing that I chose that I wasn't sure was a good choice and now think is a splendid choice. He gave some real proper heartfelt insight into that, and some very measured. And I would be very interested to talk. I must talk to Joe about this. Actually, I'm thinking out loud now. To talk to Joe about the militaristic things, because I'm very interested. I was watching some Capaldi episodes recently, where he suddenly just decides he takes a dislike to soldiers for some reason that probably seemed really cool at the time, and just seems a bit awful. And I get the thing of the Doctor, the Doctor being cross with the Brigadier for blowing up the Silurians. That's a really interesting moral dilemma, because he needs the Brigadier and he uses the Brigadier and he cooperates with the Brigadier, but he doesn't approve of the Brigadier's methods. But then there's the moral conundrum of going, well, you don't want to blow people up yourself, Doctor, but you're perfectly happy to let the Brigadier blow people up for you. And that's all. I think that's all dealt with in quite an interesting way. And it's always going to be a moral dilemma with Doctor Who, that we say, this is the peaceful hero who uses books and intellect and reason, but still blows things up and still, requires it. And it's all very well to say, well, I don't approve of your methods, soldier chap. But then you go, yeah, there's loads of things coming towards us and we're the ones with the machine guns. Do you want us to use our methods now? Oh, yes, please. And if they don't work, I'll do some wires that will blow them all up as well. And you go, oh, so you're not that actually. So, there is a conundrum at the heart of Doctor Who, and it's worth a sort of rational and interesting conversation. But also, yes, in drama, military people can be, cannon fodder and grunts, and that's not very becoming. So, but he's also shown me that I perhaps shouldn't choose Ian Glenn next week, because he kind of encapsulated Ian Glenn's performance in the fact that the soldiers are Anglican priests and all of that. So I will give Ian Glenn his nod now, because I think it's a very measured, performance of a man of great principle and stoicism that the Doctor Who is full of, and they can be quite boring parts if you're not careful. But Ian Glenn has a real natural gravitas. I think he's an absolutely terrific actor, and I think he's pitch perfect in this, and it's one of my favourite performances of the whole of this period of Doctor Who, which is why I asked Stephen Moffat about him, and I should really have asked a question about intricacies of scripting or how he was shaping the show. But I like my actors. I like my actors. Currently watching Ian Glenn in a thing called Silo, and of course I think he was great in Game of Thrones, and I'm very pleased because he got credited quite high up in Game of Thrones on a single caption. But as the series went on and his character, became, he wasn't the main part, but he was a sterling sort of lead support part. He then goes and gets the "and" credit at the end, and when somebody gets an "and" credit, it to me is a proper affirmation. I yearn one day to have an "and" credit in something. Then I will die happy. I won't die happy. I'll never be happy. That's the curse of being me. Anyway, let's not get into that. You've heard enough of my regrets, right? But Doctor Who takes me to my happy place. Although it doesn't. It sometimes pulls the unhappy things into sharp focus. But maybe it expunges them. that this is a process of catharsis. Therapy as podcast. Joe's third thing. Surely he's going to choose one of my 2 set pieces. I was a bit, I felt that choosing 2 set piece scenes seemed to be a bit lazy, but they are so good. I couldn't not choose one of them. Go on, choose one of my set piece scenes, Joe. Joe's third thing is he's standing outside in front of something, which he might explain what it is. It's not quite... Oh, it's a truck with bales of hay in it. These videos, I so want to do these for YouTube, but it's quite low on my list of things to do. But I am going to be put on the Patreon page. I'm going to be showing the videos so that you can see, you can put a face to the voice, as it were. And eventually, one day, hopefully, I'll do these as videos as well. But I've got so many things to do first. Anyway, here's Joe in front of an open back truck with some bales of hay in it, telling me what his third favourite thing about this episode of Doctor Who is.
The third favourite thing about Time of Angels is River's song. I know she featured in the opening, but I'm giving River her own segment. This story was my introduction to the character, and I thought Alex Kingston had great chemistry with Matt Smith, great chemistry with Karen Gillan, and great chemistry and great interactions with Father Octavian. So River is just really awesome throughout the whole story, and up until Husbands of River Song, this remained my favorite River Song story. Big fan of the character. My wife just bought me the latest Big Finish River Song story with Unit. Really interested in giving that a listen whenever I get the time. But that's my third thing of Time of Angels is River Song. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe. I nearly chose River Song, but I didn't. I do think she's great. I think maybe it's because my ex-wife's doubts were ringing in my ears. Or maybe it's because it's become fashionable now to knock her a bit, and I don't know why, because I think she's brilliant. She's got such charisma. She speaks Stephen Moffat's dialogue fluently. I read recently there was something in the news saying that they'd asked her to in for another part, and she'd either turned it down or wasn't available. So can you imagine? I think she was born to play River Song, and I think River Song is an important character with Doctor Who. Even though I resist timey-wimey storytelling, I find it provides more problems than it does solutions. I nonetheless understand the appeal of it to people with different perhaps minds than mine, who like sort of conundrums and problems, and certainly in terms of being a writer I'm not clever enough to write something that's timey-wimey with all those strands. Give me a beginning, a middle and an end in that order. So I'm aware it's possibly a shortcoming of mine, but I do think with Doctor Who it slightly detracts from the drama, because it means it gets into Bill and Ted territory where you can go and stop something from happening, and then you go, well, why don't you do all that all the time, etc., etc. But the River Song idea of the love story, told in a fragmented way, sometimes backwards, forwards, sideways, is a brilliant idea, and can shine a light on love and unrequited love and relationships and interaction that can be sort of heartbreaking or funny or and emotional in a different way, in a skewed way that only Doctor Who and sci-fi can do, which means it's very worth doing. And when you've got the charisma in buckets that Alex Kingston has, and the interaction that she has, as Joe said, with not just with Matt Smith, but with Ian Glenn and with Karen Gillan, it's it makes for a zinger. So yeah, good choice. I nearly chose her, didn't I? I nearly chose River. And he's given me an out 5 and 10. I think this is Joe's shameless plug. So we might end both episodes with this. I don't know, but anyway, here's a bit. This isn't for Flesh and Stone. So it's 5 and 10, shameless plug. Let's see what Joe is shameless plugging, because he deserves to. What a guest, hey? I hope you've enjoyed having him on. I certainly have. And as I say, it means a great deal to me that, having done these podcasts, there are names now that I read. They're on the, I read them out at the end of the episodes, of the people who, kind enough, daft enough to send some of their hard-earned cash my way, in order that, what is this? It's just a man talking. But there are enough of you that allow this man to talk. I don't know what you get out of it. It's the eternal dilemma of a creative. You hope what you do is good, but sometimes you can't quite believe that there's so much out there. Do you know what I mean? But there are this group of people, and Joe is among them, whose names are now familiar to me because they're the people that keep these projects going, that have shown faith in them, and not just faith, financial input. And that's not to belittle those of you who listen on iTunes and podcasts. Podcasts are free, and that's the beautiful thing about them. It's very democratic, and I listen to loads of podcasts that I love that I don't pay for. So I don't think people should be obliged to. I'm glad that there are enough listeners out there, but I'm also love this model whereby if people choose to contribute, they can and they do. But not only that, I'm familiar with their names, and they drop me a line, and I'm able to go, oh yeah, well, and thanks. And they go, no, it's great because we like this and we like that, or we don't, nobody says we don't like that actually. And here's my thing, and oh, here's a thing to tell you, and something occur, and you've suddenly got this interaction and this relationship with people that you've never met, but you talk to semi-regularly, and it's always a delight to hear from Joe, partially because, as I say, I think we have very different backgrounds and outlooks on many number of things, and have had different stimuli in life, and yet I hugely, respect and like him, even though we've never had an actual conversation. And I think it's based on respectful discourse and exchange of ideas, founded in a mutual love of a show that we nonetheless came to in completely different ways. And I always look forward to hearing from Joe, and the fact that somebody like him, who has, as I say, is from a completely different background, is somehow connects to this nonsense that I'm spurting now, I think is a testament to Doctor Who and what it does for all of us. And I think that's a good thing. I think that's a marvellous thing. Unlike this, sometimes this toxicity that you see on social media, where people get furious with people for liking the show in a different way to how they like them and all that sort of thing. The things that unite us, always, not just in Doctor Who, are always greater than the things that divide us. And so I'm much more interested in, which is why I don't really engage in internet fracas. I'm much more interested in talking to people, who we may have all sorts of, as I say, different life experiences, through which through which we see Doctor Who, and also Doctor Who informs our life experiences, but therefore in a kaleidoscope of different ways. And I think that's marvelous, and there is more that unites us than that divides us, and I think that's how you have to live your life. And I'm very lucky that this has enabled me to do that in a small and probably insignificant way, but sometimes small beautiful things is what life is all about, isn't it? So I'm really glad I've got to this one with Joe, because I really wanted to see what he had to say, and I haven't been disappointed. He said it as articulately as he does in our occasional internet exchanges, emails. Yes, internet exchanges. That's what you call emails, you old duffer. Anyway, yeah, I'm feeling enthused by that. That was a positive experience. I'm sorry that with the Moffat ones, I probably miss a lot of their greatest assets, which is the dialogue and the interaction and the chemistry, because I'm always having to talk. That's the nature of it. And I think Moffat stuff perhaps particularly suffers with that. I think Robert Holmes' stuff would too, were I not aware of every single zinger that's coming. But that's again the nature of when I'm commentating on new episodes. He said about episodes that aren't that new at all. There are people that were born when this was on who are probably capable of somersaults and driving. Who knows? But anyway, it was another life. Gosh, Preston Frog and Bucket, that's gone now. So is John the Doorman, who was the doorman there, who's a lovely fella. He's died as well, bless him. I'm not married to Catherine anymore. But they don't do. I don't think they put stickers on the dramatic bits in programs. They still shrink credits, which irritates me. But I think they're called dogs, aren't they? I think they've put the dogs down, which I'm pleased about. That's the only time I'm pleased about such a thing happening. But gosh, timey-wimey. It's cruelly woolly. I remember when this episode was new. I remember it going out the first time. I mean, I remember the Leisure Hive going out the first time, but I know that was a long time ago. I was a child then. I feel like I was a fully formed adult then, but of course I've changed and learnt a lot since Flesh and Time of Angels, which means probably in an equal time forward, I would have changed and learnt again. Hopefully for the better. Hopefully we're always progressing, and we're not set in stone, because that would be scary.
Shameless plug. When I first started filming these videos almost 3 weeks ago, I didn't really have a plan for a plug. I don't have a blog. I don't have a podcast. I don't have a YouTube. I barely have a Twitter. You don't have to follow me on Twitter. But something has come up, something that's very important. My cousin Annie, the daughter of my cousin Gary, is a special education teacher, and she has been battling brain cancer for over 5 years. They've gotten some of the cancer out, but some of it still remains, and they're fighting to save her life. Her remarkable father, Gary Wilson, my cousin, has raised a lot of money with the GoFundMe, organized not that long ago, but every little bit helps, and this is the biggest audience I can come up with to spread the word. And if you could donate to Annie's cause, that would be most wonderful. I really appreciate that, and Toby for this opportunity to spread the word.
Thanks ever so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest, Joe Lewallen, who could be found on Twitter at JokerBC67. And Annie's GoFundMe is called Help Annie with Medical Costs. It's on GoFundMe. I'll put links in the Patreon chat bits and on Twitter when I release this to the public. If you could help, that would be fantastic. I'm grateful to Joe, and of course to the patrons who make these podcasts possible. He is one, and so are Ruben Herfindahl, Stephen Moffat, Peter Burns, James Cure Smith, Peter Harness, Ronald Hayden, Rob Leonard, Christopher Meredith, Gavin McLean, Richard Straw, Neil Tate, Nick Tedston, David Trainier, Oliver Crocker, Paul Greaves, David Smith, Sean Reynolds, Giles Smith, and Ian Smith. The music is by Dave Gates, the artwork by Dylan Patterson. And there are more patrons than those named there. I'm grateful to all of them, and you too could have your name read out on occasion on the closing credits of a Happy Times and Places or an Indefinable Magic or a Far Too Much Information if you go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke, where for as little as £3 a month you get 3 releases a week. That's 3 generally audio releases, but sometimes there's literature, sometimes there's a bit of video, but 3 proper hefty bits of, in inverted commas, entertainment per week, and on a Tuesday you also get a picture of my dog as a bonus. And that's for £3 a month, and it goes up to 5, 10, 20, whatever you want. But whatever level of patronage you give, you will get all of the, in inverted commas, entertainment stuff. There are a few things to drag you up the tiers, but none of them essential. He said selling them really well. Basically, it's a sort of pay what you can / are inclined so to do. And you get 10% off if you join up for a year in advance, because then I gotcha. But if you don't fancy being, obligated, or the monthly thing, or, you don't, you've got better things to spend your money on, that is absolutely fine. You can go to iTunes, Spotify, Patreon, and it costs you nothing to leave a 5-star review. That really, really helps. There's so much stuff out there. The 5-star reviews really do help to sort of kick us into people's awareness. And I say us, me. It's just me. I'm sorry about that. You get what you pay for, which, as I say, is just me. Anyway, 5-star reviews, a couple of lines of something to say that you like about these really helps passing internet trade. But if you do fancy the Patreon thing, as I say, from £3 a month, plus 10% discount if you sign up for a year, you get exclusive releases, you get monthly AMAs, you get, back and forth chats, all that sort of thing. It's quite a nice community. It's good fun. Lots of people, just there being like the Kingdom of Traken. So come along and don't be a milker. Or you can go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke, and then you don't have to take part in anything or be obligated to anything, but it's a way of giving me a tip via cyberspace. I'd be grateful. Of course, I'm out there in the world of social media. You have to be. I'm trying to get good at Instagram, and I'm making videos and everything at toby.hadoke, particularly to advertise my comedy wares. And I'm doing Excess Malarkey every Tuesday in Manchester. I've also started a monthly new material night featuring some pretty famous names of television comedy and all that, trying out their new material once a month in Manchester. So, I still do the J job, trying to make people laugh. I mean, I try and make you laugh here, but about Doctor Who, and not always try to make you laugh. I sometimes like to hide behind facts and autobiographical memories related to Doctor Who. You know what it is. You've just listened to nearly an hour and a half of it. Anyway, come and see my comedy stuff. And Instagram has clips and things. Toby.hadoke. I'm on Twitter at Toby Hadoke. I have a Facebook page, not my personal Facebook. Hello me. That's I've got to slim that down anyway because I've reached my limit of friends. Yeah, how many of them will come around when you have a barbecue, Toby? But I have a page where I can have unlimited, likers. You can only have a certain amount of friends, but you can have unlimited likers. That's the internet in a nutshell. So do that on the Facebook because I put up that's where I put up all the sort of work stuff. And these podcasts have their own Twitter feed as well called @Hadoke Podcasts. So do all of that if you're not at 1 hour 25 minutes sick of me. Well, you're not going to get very long post-credits today, he says, because they started off as bon mots and have become sort of extended, pointless monologues. But I just have had quite a nice thing, actually. I've just been reviewing some footage for a Chris Chapman Doctor Who DVD making of that I'm going to be involved with, but he's put all the interview material. Some of it's archival, some of it he'd got in the bank before we sort of film our bits. And one of the crew tells a tale of going, I was working on this comedy show up north, and somebody mentioned that I'd done a Doctor Who, and this person went, what was this? Well, I was working in Birmingham Horror Fang Rock, and this guy got his mate and blah 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 blah. And I just had to text Chris and say, you know that that anecdote that guy does about meeting a guy on a set of a comedy show. You never guess who he's talking about because it was me. So that's quite nice. It's quite nice if you. It's terribly narcissistic, isn't it? I like that anecdote because it was actually about me. But no, I just quite like. I still feel just to be a little part of Doctor Who is amazing to me, and I like the fact when it was just really fun to come across. Go, I think I know that guy. Is that guy? And then he tells that story, and you go, oh, well, that was something he did on a set with me. It's completely unrelated to this. Nobody involved knew. He didn't know that I was going to be presenting this doc. Chris didn't know when he interviewed him that he was actually talking about me. And it's just quite nice, isn't it? It's a coincidence. It's not narcissism. It's just a winning and amusing coincidence. So I think that's quite fun. I'm one thing I didn't talk about at the end of that was when Joe talked about Doctor Who being hard on the military and the church. And he's right. And I think that's really interesting. I haven't recorded episode 2 as I record this. Sometimes I record these post-credit bits when I've done the whole thing, but I haven't had time to watch Flesh and Stone yet. So I'm just putting it in there to go talk about Doctor Who and Doctor Who fandom being kind about the church and, Doctor Who's attitude to religion, because and our modern day attitude to religion. And I'm not a religious person, but I actually... And many, many years ago, I would have been quite, dismissive of religion. And I actually think, now I'm hugely respectful of. I still don't believe, but I'm rather sad about that because I actually think religion is actually very helpful for society. And young me, who would have been more than happy to kick the church. Probably only the church, which is interesting, the Christian church, the one I sort of grew up in. And I went to a Roman Catholic school for a bit and was very into it. Because, of course, I'm a fan, do you know what I mean? I got well into it. I learnt all the bits and everything. I think religion is a really interesting and complex thing. And like a lot of things, I mean, I've got 2 kids and they're both quite sort of dismissive of religion. I go, don't be too, don't be so quick. Don't be so quick to judge, and actually a lot of the things that they would judge religion for, they actually do in their dismissal of religion. Well, it doesn't want to hear other points of view, and it just tells people what to think, and various other things that I see non-religious people exhibit in other areas. So I think it's complicated, and I think it's interesting, and I think I'm supposed to be talking about this next episode. Why didn't I just leave it at the anecdote about the man who was talking about me? Yes, I was worshipping a false idol, my own bloody reflection. Anyway, there's lots to say about religion, but I find religion a very interesting subject, and I'm respectful of people that manage to. Well, I suppose it does speak to the fact that I like that anecdote because it was about me. I think the reason religion is important, and increasingly important in this day and age, which I think is getting quite narcissistic, is that, of course, if you're subservient to something, if you are a follower of a religion, you don't necessarily come first. You humble yourself. You take your own self, out of being front and center of every sort of decision that you make, moral choice. And I know clearly that can go too far the other way, and perverted religion has been the cause of a great many atrocities. But I think on a purely personal level, I think having something that you subjugate your own ego to is increasingly necessary in the world that we're living in. And that's a lot of what I would have said next week had I not just said it now. But of course my mind is so addled I'll probably forget. So you'll get a recap of this probably when I should be talking about machine guns or actors, or whether the Doctor's wearing his jacket or not in that really weird bit in the forest that I'm still not 100% sure. I don't understand. But as the faithful will tell you, you don't have to understand it all. You just have to go with it.